On the face of it, keeping our bearings on the Appalachian Trail should be pretty easy. After all, it's a single trail, and it's easy to follow the white blazes like this one in the middle of the screen, right? Yet the fact is, this is not a white blaze. It's a blue blaze on one of the hundreds of side trails that connect to the AT, and it's a very pale shade of blue. So pale that if we just glanced at it, we might not notice it's actually blue. And this is a mistake I have made myself. I once wandered a couple of miles down a side trail before it began to sink in I wasn't on the AT anymore. I had to stand about a foot away from one of the blue blazes and give it a close look before I was sure it was really blue. Not all blue blazes are that pale, but I've seen a number that are. Another detail is that if we aren't paying attention, it's quite possible to accidentally head southbound when we're supposed to be hiking northbound. I have come close to making this mistake more than once. While these kinds of mistakes are hardly life-threatening, they still are annoying when they happen to us. So our topic is going to be potential problems like this and how we can avoid getting lost, confused, or turned around on the AT. We'll also talk about resources available to help us navigate the trail. When we are hiking mile after mile, day after day on the AT, it's easy to zone out and not pay too much attention to our surroundings. Some hikers have walked past water springs and waterfalls right next to the trail without even noticing they were there. But any time we encounter a trail intersection on the AT is a good time to hit the brakes and take a good look at any signs or blazes we see. As I have said earlier, many hundreds of side trails intersect with the AT. Some of these intersections are marked with an abundance of signs, and that certainly makes things easier. In the Shenandoah National Park, trail intersections usually have a concrete post with directions stamped on a metal band around the post. This can require bending over and squinting at the band to make sure we don't take a wrong turn. And after having once made such a wrong turn myself, I was happy to bend over and squint at those bands. Some trail intersections might be marked by only a double blaze, like this one. Two blazes, one atop the other, like this, tell us the AT makes a turn, usually close to a 90-degree turn. The blaze on the top is to the left of the one on the bottom. This tells us the trail makes a left turn. Even so, I seem to remember at least a couple of double blazes squarely on top of each other. This made me look around to make sure I was making the right turn, but it was better than no warning at all. And other intersections will have no particular markings. When we hit one of these, we need to give a close look at any blazes we see to make sure the white blazes are really white and not blue. Many blue blazes, as I have said, are a nice shiny blue. Others, like this one, may have mostly crumbled away. It still looks blue in this light, but when I took a flash photo of it, now it's starting to look white. If it was at night and we shined a flashlight on it, it might look white then also. The AT Conservancy sells a set of 11 guidebooks that cover the entire trail. These books list every trail intersection and tell the hiker which way to turn at every intersection I have seen listed. On my section hikes, I often have photocopied the pages I needed and carried them with me. Another option for section hikers is the ATC's maps. I always have carried one or more that cover the section I was hiking. Instead of carrying a set of 11 books and scores of maps, thru hikers almost always carry one of these. Each of these books covers the entire AT. They list most, if not all, trail intersections, but don't count on them to tell you which way to turn. We should pause here and address the question of why every trail intersection on the AT is not lavishly equipped with detailed signs. The AT is kept in operation mostly by hundreds, if not thousands of volunteers. Money is certainly limited. I am inclined to thank the AT volunteers for what they do and not criticize them for what they don't do. Also, the AT is supposed to be an essentially wilderness experience. I have said earlier that anyone who expects the AT to be a convenient place is bound to be disappointed. If there is a burden on AT hikers to navigate correctly, it's one more thing that comes with the territory. Lord only knows how many white blazes there are on the AT, and the volunteers take care of those also. I have read some areas only have 5 white blazes per mile. In some areas, the blazes are particularly vulnerable to the elements. For example, at some high elevations, there is nothing but rock. Blazes on those rocks are exposed to wind, snow, ice, rain, and probably have a limited lifespan. This means there could be quite a distance between blazes in those areas. In addition to trail intersections, the AT crosses scores of highways. At some of them, the trail is marked by nice signs like this. Some have a post marked with a white blaze. Other road crossings have basically nothing. Even at those crossings, it's usually easy to spot the AT on the other side. Usually, but not always. Once or twice, I've had to look long and hard at the other side of the highway to spot the trail. At such spots, the trail might not be directly opposite the trail on the other side of the road. It might be off to one side or another by 20 or 30 yards. At such spots, we have no choice except to stand there and keep looking until we find it. I would not start walking long distances up and down the road during this search because I've never seen a road crossing where that was necessary. And before we leave the topic of white blazes, we need to remember they could be painted on anything. They could be on bridge railings, any vertical surface, and sometimes on the pavement we walk on. I have always carried a compass on the AT, and many times that's been the only thing that kept me from accidentally heading the wrong direction down the trail. Many AT shelters and lean-tos are at the end of long side trails. When I have returned to the trail from these spots in the morning, I wasn't always sure if I should turn left or right. This happened because I was extremely tired the night before when I turned to go to the shelter, and I wasn't paying too much attention to what I was doing. And the next morning, I looked at my compass when I returned to the trail. If I was hiking northbound, I always found the correct direction would be northerly compared to where I stood. For example, it might be northwest, northeast, or west by northwest, or something similar. Every single time I did this, it worked. I was going the right way. I always carry 2 compasses in the outdoors, no matter where I am. I do this because many times people have convinced themselves their compass was wrong. But when 2 compasses point north, we are outvoted. And for the record, I use 1 compass at a time. If we hold 2 compasses side by side, the needles can point at each other. If by some chance we discover we did walk miles down a side trail by mistake, or we did head south when we were supposed to head north, usually the only option is to turn around and backtrack. Yes, it does completely suck, but in my case, it taught me to start paying closer attention to where I was going. If anyone might be tempted to leave the trail and bushwhack through the woods to solve such a problem, I would urge them in a loud voice not to even think about trying it. I have done a fair bit of bushwhacking when hunting. It is always very slow going and usually difficult to follow a straight line. Because of the terrain along the AT, a bushwhacker can easily encounter areas that are essentially impassable. And if somebody breaks his leg bushwhacking off the AT, it could be game over for good. We need to keep in mind the AT Conservancy tells us many areas of the trail have no cell phone service. So, stick to the trails, please, and thank you. If you are trying to hike the AT and you find a blaze on a tree that isn't white or blue, you probably made 2 wrong turns instead of 1. I have never seen a side trail off the AT that didn't use blue blazes. But in some areas, other kinds of trails can intersect with blue blazed trails. For example, a rectangular yellow blaze is a horse trail. Some trails, for example in Pennsylvania, use orange or red blazes. And for those who don't know, horses are not allowed on the AT, which is for foot travel only. And if this offends any horse owners, much of the terrain is far too rough to be navigated by any horse. And with that, we are once again done. I'd like to thank everyone who has subscribed, and if you have not subscribed, please consider doing so. It would be very much appreciated. And as always, thanks for watching.